Welcome everyone, wherever you're dialing in from. Today, I've got the privilege of hosting this virtual panel. It's a session that we put together with our friends at Planhat, and we're especially delighted that Andreas, Senior Director of RevOps at Superside, has decided to join us, share some of his views on maximizing LTV and how sales and customer success unite for revenue growth. So it's a big title. It's promising a lot, Andreas. No pressure. But teaming up with you today, we've got Tom, founder and CEO of Jiminny, and Chris, CCO at Planhat. So for those of you who are not familiar with the companies, we are actually all customers of each other as well. We'll be sharing more information about that in the recap, but we can get onto that a little bit later down the line. So gents, thank you so much. I will drop the image for the time being and we can get started. So we wanted to dive straight into it. We've done our introductions. Andreas, when we were preparing for this session, one of the things that stuck out to me the most was you mentioned that you felt CS often was the forgotten child when it came to revenue at a business. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Why do you feel that way?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for inviting me in this panel. Like, I don't know if I can talk on behalf of the whole RevOps community, but definitely I can pass over some of the comments that I look at the different Slack channels that I participate, etc. Like, I think we all the revenue operations leaders feel like that, which is we don't give enough love and enough focus on the CSS system organization in total. We don't support them enough, and there are multiple reasons for that. But like in a lot of the cases, we focus a lot on what the sales team is going to be doing or what the marketing team is going to be doing, and we leave the CS org outside. Inside my team, I'm trying to do my best in order to support like the CS team, and like my team is doing that. But I always have like this kind of feeling. We don't sit very close to them many of the times. We don't have a direct line of talking to them and giving them our point of view in the data and like in the recommendations. And also like a lot of the projects that like come in for the CS and optimizing CS, usually in the revenue operations world, like they're gonna be deprioritized because sales and marketing is just gonna take over. So I'm sorry, CS people out there, it's not happening on purpose, but like, and it is like a feeling that I have, and like expressing other people as well, that there is no much love for the CS teams right now.
True.
Unfortunately.
I'm one of the forgotten children of CS, Andreas. I hear you, man. It's definitely something that happens, but I think that it happens for so many reasons, right? Because I think that it isn't revenue operations forgetting customer success. I think that generally speaking, the vast majority of organizations, customer success is the forgotten child. This isn't a RevOps thing at all. It's a much bigger challenge for CS about go-to-market in general, where in many organizations, go-to-market is some sort of combination of product, marketing, and sales. Then you win the deal and win the opportunity in your CRM, and then magic just happens, and they're a happy customer forever, and no one needs to worry about them. And that's the typical thing that RevOps is doing. They're trying to drive go-to-market. The CEO has an agenda to drive this. Tom is an exception to this, as we'll learn in this webinar. But generally speaking, that's the MO of go-to-market. It's product into marketing into sales, and that's what RevOps is trying to do. So certainly at Planhat and talking to lots of CS leaders around the world, we see this more broadly. Customer success is a forgotten child in many organizations, which is totally insane, because from my point of view, it's the very center of your business. If you're not looking after your customers, if you're not making them successful, your business will fail. So I'm here to defend the RevOps team as well. You're not the only people orphaning us.
Yeah, I think you made a really interesting point before, Chris. Hi, everyone, by the way. It's just like everyone wants a short-term win and the short-term gain. So, naturally people think, oh, I'm going to see a quicker result with sales. So you know, to Andreas's point, that tends where the focus and the energy gets, but it's just a longer play. So I think it's a mind shifting. It's thinking with a more infinite mindset about your business and a longer term view on what success looks like, which is hard when everyone takes money from investors on a 5-year cycle, right? But that's the reality of the world you're in. So I think it's a balance, and it's I do believe like you've got to make that cultural shift and that cultural change to think differently. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Chris, how... Oh, sorry, Andreas, go ahead.
No, like there is this controversial argument that like all the analysis, all the data out there, all the books, all the papers, the announcements that are being done by CS leaders, RevOps leaders, like anybody analyzing sales data in general, like we all say the revenue is going to come from growth and expansion. It's not going to come from the acquisition. Yet, vast majority of our projects will go into acquisition, and that's like a controversy of the whole business.
How do you move away from that mindset then? I feel like Planhat, as an example, right, pretty unique in this perspective, as far as I understand, Chris. Like, we've spoken about how others might deem CS to be the forgotten child. What have you folks done at Planhat to counteract this in terms of the way that you run your operations there?
So I think there's a couple of elements of Planhat that are very interesting. So the first thing is that we bootstrapped the business for a very long time. So we bootstrapped the business till we had about 100 employees. We're a fairly sizable business. And when you're bootstrapping a company, you know, very simply, you know, you realize that if you do not retain your customers, you will not be able to make payroll. So it's very deeply ingrained in your DNA as a business that, you know, you've got to make payroll, you've got to retain and grow your customers over time. So customer management becomes absolutely central to everything you're doing. So, you know, for us, as we scale the business, we're investing in a post-sale team much more aggressively and quickly than we were investing in a sales team. So, you know, we got to the point where I think we had one salesperson, but we had 10 people thinking about post-sale. And that was a little bit, you know, the company did very well. There was a sort of a viral effect of people looking at the technology and wanting to get it. There was a lot of referrals and so on. But from day one, it became very clear that if we were to build a business in a bootstrapped way, you know, we had to be able to keep and, you know, make our customers successful. So that was where the investment went. And I think that, I know, as Tom said, it takes longer to affect change in customer success than it does to affect change in sales. So many CEOs who take money and they don't bootstrap, they take money on a 5-year cycle, or they're running a public company and they're looking all the time at the next quarterly report, which may, you know, dictate their career. They're thinking, well, how do I make an impact over the course of the next 3 months or the next 12 months? And it's very hard to say, hey, you know what we'll do? We'll change how we onboard our customers, because you won't see the impact of that, you know, for a minimum of 12 months, assuming you're on a 12-month contract cycle. Whereas you change how you run sales, or you change how you develop pipeline, and you can see that impact much faster. So, you know, the analogy I always give is, running sales is like driving a speedboat, whereas running customer success is like turning a cargo ship. You know, it has to be, as Tom said, a much longer term mindset in what you're doing. And frankly, not that many CEOs and CFOs understand that.
Well, I think there are a few people in the comments that agree with you on that one, Chris. I think there was a soundbite if we ever had one. I mean, if we're talking then about the setup of these teams, right? Planhat was, you know, quite a specific example there. I'm curious. We've got our senior director of RevOps here, Andreas, right? In your opinion, as the sort of RevOps representative on the panel, not that we all don't have a lot of love for it, but how would you go about organizing GTM teams then, modern GTM teams, and where does that RevOps piece fit into that puzzle?
Yeah, that's a very nice subject, and I think like that's if you follow like LinkedIn articles about RevOps people, like usually the main question that we have: where does RevOps reports to? Do we report to the CRO? Do we report to the VP of Sales? Do we report to the CMO? To the CCO? I have seen so many different patterns out there. My approach always like I always look at RevOps as a RevOps, like the evolution of RevOps from sales and of sales operation, marketing operations, customer success operations, brought all together and tried to build something that looks at your whole GTM team. So RevOps by definition is a team that like works closely with everyone, and like it's a silo breaker. Like that, RevOps will not allow something to be siloed in the marketing team or siloed in the sales team or siloed in the CSM team. There are multiple ways to do that. Like, of course, organizational format is one of them. I always argue that like it's not a matter of like to whom you are reporting, but like whether or not this is clear to all the stakeholders that RevOps that reports to one department because it needs to report to somebody. We cannot all report to the CEO. Will have the flexibility and the freedom to actually do the projects and actually communicate with all the different leaders. So in the past in Superside, I was reporting to the VP of sales. Now he has become the CRO. It's clearer on like on the communication, but even when he was a VP of sales, it was clear to all the other leaders, the VP of marketing, the VP of customer success, that I have the freedom to actually do the projects that I need to do in order to bridge the gaps between the departments. And that was a mandate, and I was lucky enough to have a CEO who was actually embracing the idea and trying to do that. I fear and I know that like that's not the case in many of the revenue operations departments out there. So hopefully that will change one day.
Yeah,
I think Chris,
think. Go on,
no, Chris has done something different to that. Like he has a different approach. So
no, Tom, you go jump on that, and then I've got some comments as well.
No, I think Andreas, it's interesting, the job design, isn't it, and the roles and responsibilities of what people think RevOps are. I was talking to you about it the other day in terms of people still think too much of it about administration or just even reporting on the numbers, whereas you see it as how am I making change, almost like it's a BizOps thing. Well, I know it's got a label of RevOps, but your job is to spot trends, make change, make things happen. And it's how many people actually define, if it's going to have an impact on the lifetime value of your customers, have you got the job design right? Are you actually hiring the right person who can do that for your business? Which I think is really interesting. You kind of have like a fresh approach on what that role should be, or to what people think of it historically as, you know.
Yeah. And I think building on what Andreas has said and what Tom was saying, a lot of it seems to come down to, you know, RevOps becomes a little bit of an admin center if it doesn't have any decision-making power. And so it's very, you know, I think Andreas, like you were spot on the way you're talking about it, you know, your CEO understands that you guys have to have decision-making power so you can drive action. And I always think one of the interesting questions in RevOps and how it, you know, germinates in the company is, well, when do you start? When do you bring in RevOps? You know, at what point in the business? Because, you know, you know, when Tom starts Jiminny, he doesn't think on day one, you know what I need? I need a RevOps person. You know, that's not what he thinks. He thinks I need an engineer, and then probably thinks I need a seller. You know, so at what point in the maturity of a business should you bring in RevOps? Because when you bring them in, tends to influence kind of the impact and the influence they then have on the organization. What have you seen, Andreas, about when RevOps should be in a company?
I was in a panel the other day. Like my proposal is like, you know, like the moment that you start hiring and you're like scaling your business depends on the kind of CEO you are and what kind of people you're gonna hire. Like I think like the moment that you start hiring a business and like you wanna add more channels in your business and like make it like hire CS people and make like operational decisions on that and try to generate revenue from like the different channels. This is the moment that like you should be hiring for a revenue operations. Depends again like what's your knowledge about go to market, what's your understanding on sales, etc. Because like different leaders will have different strengths on this subject. I would say hire a RevOps before you hire a VP of sales. Like I find RevOps more. It will give you more insights on what kind of VP of sales you should be hiring in the end. And that goes the same for the VP of customer success. I think bringing like the RevOps much earlier in the business, it's going to help you make better decisions. Of course, I'm RevOps. I'm going to advertise my job.
Yeah, I think everyone's seen that curve, haven't they, where it says which VPs, like order you should hire your VPs in, where it says that, oh, VP of marketing, VP of success, VP of sales, or I think in that order. Maybe you should add VP of RevOps somewhere early on. post-marketing, maybe.
And in the in the sort of the go-to-market cycle. So I think when I think about a go-to-market cycle, I would say like fundamentally the role in go-to-market is aligning what product is building with what marketing is talking about, with what sales is pitching, and with what customer success is delivering. Right? It's that continuous alignment, right? And then it becomes a virtuous cycle because ideally customer success is delivering something. They feed that back to product starts to refine the product, and you then develop your ICP. And the ICP is because things go through the channel all the way back with feedback from customer success, and then you know where you're, you know where you're going. Is that how you see RevOps in this go-to-market flow, Andreas? That it's about aligning those four, or do you see it having a different approach?
Definitely aligning. Like, I'm gonna make another argument. I see the whole go-to-market as a product by itself. Like, it's a product by itself inside the company that's building another product. So you need at some point a product manager and somebody who's going to organize the different departments, going to organize your UI, your take all the requirements of the different teams, the engineers. So I envision RevOps as that product manager perspective that starts to unite all the different departments that building your product. That's how I see that. Like, I think it's important to be there early on.
I'm interested, Andreas, you mentioned the term silo breaker before. As someone who's spent most of their career in marketing, one of the questions I had was, where do you see people making this mistake, right? We've got people on the call that are talking about uniting or wanting to learn about sales and customer success, leadership to scale revenue growth. Where are you seeing these sales and customer success leaders getting it wrong? What is enabling some of this silo in your opinion?
Many examples of usually what happens is marketing or sales or even customer success will make a decision and will try to drive something, try to do a project by themselves without recognizing what is the impact on the rest of the teams. Like, for example, there is a scenario like sales taking a lot of risk and signing more risky customers without taking into consideration how this is going to affect the CSM team and the churn and all the other effects that this is going to have. And in the end, because sales and customer success usually run on a commission model as well on their pocket, to be honest. So I think when I'm talking about a silo breaker, that's a little bit of what I'm talking about. Because a RevOps leader will talk with the leadership of marketing, will talk with the leadership of sales, will talk with the leadership of the CSM, and we'll be able to connect those dots and making sure that either the information is being shared or being that person in that meeting who raised the hand and say, have you thought about the effect this is going to have on the CSM's life or on anything else? Maybe it's a move that we want to do and something that we want to take as a risk, but at least making sure that there is this kind of always continuation of information and sharing the information. I think transparency in this case is the key word.
Transparency. Okay. How could organizations go about trying to engineer that transparency? I mean, Chris, I think you mentioned something when we had a call a few days ago about Planhat's sort of strategy for going about this internally. Is that something you can share with us?
Yeah, so we, obviously we, build our business around, the Planhat platform, because everyone's using this thing, and we kind of center the business around the customer. But I think that what we're trying to do as we organize the business is we want all of our different, go-to-market leaders and functions to be able to execute as best they can without having things get in the way. So we've centralized, RevOps under our CFO, and our CFO, I'd say, is, something of a hybrid CFO, COO. He's, understands the business very deeply. He's commercially minded as well. And I just refer to that team as the central brain. So they're the central brain. They're thinking about the business the whole time. They're understanding where there's opportunities in marketing. They're looking to bridge the gaps that Andreas is talking about between, say, what product is building and what marketing is talking about. They're also providing insight to the sales team. They're also providing insight into the CS team. We also have a CS ops role as well, which is a little bit just very, very operational. That's partly because of the business we're in. But I like this concept of the central brain. We hire a bunch of super smart people, and we let them sit in the room, crunch numbers, think things through, analyze things, look at patterns, and then they send the executors out to execute. And that's a simplification of what we're doing, but it's a model that I think is helping us scale very quickly.
Well, Andreas, I was interested, like, with all these different topics, and what can you do to make it, better? One thing I can only speak from my size business, right? We've all got different size companies we work in. Is like, how do you actually make equality? So, like, are you paying very similar base salaries? Are you comping CS enough as well? That's something like I've tried to do over time. Otherwise, how do you actually get the departments feeling like they're equals, behaving like they're equals? Just because one salesperson might bill $1 million, one has 5 million of renewals and renews for $1 million. Why should they be any different? But I think historically, what I see is there's a lot of differences in like how they get recognized in the business, how they get comped, how they get paid. I don't know if there's anything you've done to like look at that, guys, or tackle that from a business perspective.
I would say about Superside, like, we are good at recognition. Like, one thing that we are good at is like making sure people are getting recognized about their input, and like we go beyond the CS and the sales team. We go to even the legal team that's gonna help or to close a deal. We're gonna go to our creative team that is working on an account when we are securing a renewal. And I think we all have like somewhere like this deals party notification that comes in. I think one of the most easy things and very important in that deals party notification to tag all the people that are working in that project, for that customer. So whenever we sign a deal, we're gonna tag the account executive, the BDR, the legal team, the pre-sales team that work on that opportunity. When we have a renewal, we're gonna tag the CSM, the account executive, the creative team, the creative director, the CPM, like everybody who's worked. And I think like even that, it's like such a small thing to do. It has such an impact to everybody to be recognized and get that notification that this happened, and all the company is going there. And this is driven, by the way, by the C-level, because usually my C-level will go to that notifications and will congratulate the team, will give like the credits. And that's like a very, very nice environment to work.
Mm-hmm.
But you do it on the CS side as well?
Yeah.
You do it and what is so obviously for sales, it's like, hey, they signed the deal, yeah, this is everyone involved. What is it on the CS side that you highlight?
Renewals and upgrades, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We don't celebrate if any downgrade would happen, if that's the question.
Yeah. But I think that's so interesting as well, because on the CS side, it's an interesting element of we go back to the beginning of customer success as a forgotten child. Like, of course, celebrate the renewal, celebrate the upgrade, it makes sense, but at the same time, it's we're celebrating such a lagging indicator in a business, rather than celebrating like whatever is the better leading indicator for Superside or for any other business. I think there's something very interesting about in general in customer success. Is like, how do you identify the things that really do drive success? So how do you specifically identify the objective of your customer? How do you celebrate the achievement of that objective, or sign off by the customer that they've achieved an objective or they've met a metric that they wanted to meet, and trying to celebrate that really can pull the organization around together. And also it helps sales understand, we sold this customer and now we're achieving this objective 6 months later, or whatever it may be. It helps product understand the things that we're celebrating. So it brings the language of success everywhere else in go-to-market, rather than the language of transaction, which is typically what happens with, renewal and upsell celebration. So I think it's fantastic you guys are celebrating all these things. It's just interesting which elements of it we choose to celebrate and how we choose to do it.
Yeah, I will even tell you that we celebrate like Okay, that's like the generic celebration channel that goes the whole company, but like inside the team channel, we're gonna celebrate everything. Like even an opportunity being opening up, like congrats, you are now discussing an upgrade. We don't know what's gonna happen, but you are making something happening there. I think like you know, and from an operations standpoint, like these are easy things to do. You like Planhat had shown both like we integrate with Slack. Like it's very easy things to do and has like so much impact to the teams. Like it's the first thing that if it fails and it's not working, everybody will go nuts.
Yeah, it's interesting. Often it's about the end result. I just think of something we do. We have a channel called customer feedback, and it actually all the NPS from Planhat comes in on a per user basis. So you're going to think I'm an absolute geek, but I almost read every individual user NPS that comes through. So if someone gives a like something that's not an 8, then we're on it because like they're not an advocate of Jiminny. But in that channel, talking about the wins in between, Andreas, it's like someone goes on site with a customer, they give feedback about someone in the process, they did maybe a workshop on how to use the product, and this gets shared amongst the team. So even if someone's in more of a product role or an enablement role, they're getting kind of shout outs and kudos for the work they do. Like I think you were saying it, Chris, what's happening like every day, every week to make customers happy, right? And I think us doing that in Slack for the size of our company seems to like work quite well. Not always just the end result.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And I mean, it's fantastic that because if you're reading it, then the rest of the organization will be following. Because one of the questions, kind of, what organization are you? Is like, what are your stories? Like, what are the cultural stories that you talk about as a business? It's like, is it everyone celebrates the time we landed that big contract? Is it that big release? Or is it no? It's actually like when we absolutely nailed this project for this customer, and as a result, they were celebrating, they were doing testimonials, they did a case study, whatever is the kind of, the output of doing that. And I think it's fantastic that you're following these things so much. I think the other thing that's really important about this, and kind of going back to, customer success as the forgotten child, is by having, these celebrations of things that go on in the life cycle, you're doing two things. One, you're bringing empathy to the customer experience internally into your organization. So people understand like, oh, we did this thing that we're celebrating. That's important for our customers. People more broadly understand that. And two, you're teaching the language of success to the rest of your organization. So now your engineers who may not otherwise understand it, they're suddenly understanding, okay, this is things that our customers care about. Now I understand why I was making that button or doing that thing I was doing and I was building the product. And so much, and no disrespect to the devs out there, but there's so much of this is about teaching empathy, because in so many organizations, the reason customer success is forgotten child is because the assumption is that the product works and they bought the thing because they wanted to buy it, not that they had some vision of what they wanted to achieve. They bought the thing because they made a good salesperson, and now they've got this thing, and it's somehow we've got to make it fit perfectly to their requirements. So it's about teaching empathy in the organization to get us there.
It's definitely about definitions, isn't it? You could say, is the word customer too transactional? And it's a partnership, right? You're both trying to make something work together. Just because someone's exchanging cash is the other way around. So right. Try and see it as a partnership that you're in it together to kind of make it work ultimately. Yeah, well, not trying to change customer success to partnerships, Chris, there at the end of the webinar, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, I'm with you.
We're not ready for that kind of fallout just yet. But speaking of which, I think obviously the three of you have highlighted just how critical recognition is there. We've spoken about definition. We've even talked about structure. We're at the business end of this panel now, and we're keen to understand how to maximize LTV. So examples that we can wrap up with that I'd appreciate, whether we're thinking, team training, tools. One of the main reasons that we're here, of course, is how Jiminny's conversation intelligence platform integrates with Planhat CRM, and we've got some power users like Andreas at Superside, but that's a very specific thing. Is there anything that you'd each wrap up with as a recommendation for what you're implementing today in your businesses to affect this kind of change? Maybe Tom, if I can pick on you first, what would you leave this group with?
Yeah, I think in just terms of the audience for a growing and then a scaling business is just thinking, are you investing the right amount in your customer to drive that LTV? Have you got enough heads? Like when we started, we were 4 in CS to 1 salesperson. We still have more CSMs than we do AEs. I think is that balance of what you're trying to achieve. So are you investing the right amount? Are they rewarded in the right way? And are you making sure they're seen as like equals in the business? So if you do start from a blank sheet or a blank canvas, like Chris and the guys did, the earlier you can embed all this, the better, right? To make it a success. Otherwise, it becomes anything that you try and do becomes harder as you get bigger. You know.
Chris, what about yourself? What do you reckon?
I think I'd say two things. I'll try and be brief, which I'm not very good at. But first thing being, make sure you've got a unified language through go-to-market. I think that's such a key thing that doesn't happen, because very often we talk to post-sale teams, customer success teams, and they're talking to their customers about a bunch of stuff, and it's unfamiliar wording and language and phrasing for their customer, because their customer's been going through something different with the sales process. I think you have to have a familiar language across go-to-market, what you're marketing, the words you're using, how you're selling, how you're pitching, and then how you're delivering value. You want to have a shared language because it just makes it simpler for your customer. So I think that's one kind of very actionable way of doing it. If whichever part of the business you're in, you can look at the language being used and how that aligns. And then I think particularly on the post-sale side, there's clearly some, at the moment, or maybe the last 18 months, the big focus has been this kind of concept of do more with less. There's going to be less investment in post-sale and all of this stuff with the downturn and whatnot. But I actually think that you should spin it the other way around. Like you should do less and try to achieve more. And I think that too many post-sale teams are just trying to do everything. And what you need to do is just scrap it all and just think through what are the things that are genuinely impactful, not the things that are fluffy, but what should you really, really prioritize? So for example, we integrated with Jiminny because then we get the AI call transcripts into Planhat, and it saves people having to write long, thoughtful notes because the Jiminny transcript is fantastic and it comes in and it summarizes it beautifully. So think through where you can cut corners, save time, and prioritize on the things that matter. So do less to achieve more, not more to achieve less.
Which I think comes at an incredibly useful time in the year as well, as people are looking at 2025 and budget planning as well. It's picking those levers are critical. Andreas, last but not least.
I'm gonna double down on I like the do less, and I think like a difference that today like the CS team has today is like they have tools like Planhat, like Jiminny, or other vendors out there. Like they have what it takes in order to start being like we used to call it more data driven, but like all these tools, all this information is helping you to do your job faster, easier, and be able to spend more time understanding what the customer needs, your customer needs, in order to drive growth, in order to drive expansion, in order to drive renewals, etc. So I would say that like and I see that in the chat because we have some people from my company as well. Like some time ago, like when we first implemented Planhat, we still had the CSMs using a Word document where they were putting all their notes, all the information about the renewals, etc. And it was a very, very difficult to convince them to migrate over to Planhat. But like now, these CSMs, like not only they are using Planhat, like it's where they live on a daily basis and what they use on a daily basis. And when I first talked with Tom, and I told him like, you need to build a Jiminny integration with Planhat. We need that. That's a mandatory thing for us. I think like from revenue operations perspective, the tools are there, the integrations are there. Everything has matured enough in order to give you now structured data in a format that you can take and actually use. AI is there, whatever you use it as a ChatGPT or whatever else, it is there. So it is helping you to analyze this data much faster. So my advice is start using these tools. If you don't know how, reach out to your RevOps teams in order to get some trainings. And if you have something missing, a thing that revenue operations departments everywhere are missing is feedback from the reps We love feedback. We want to hear what the reps are experiencing. We design a flow or a process, and we are telling them where to click. We don't know if that makes sense to them. So give us the feedback, what you're missing, what you're not missing, and use the tools in order to maximize the time that you spend to understand the customer pains and how to solve them.
Which I think is, you know, a perfect callback to the point that Tom was making about, you know, calling people customers and almost that transactional feel to it. If you have that time, you're really transforming a transaction into a relationship, a proper partnership. So yeah, Andreas, that was brilliant. Thank you for joining. Chris from Planhat and Tom from Jiminny.